Hey crafty people, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd, because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. Over the years I've dabbled in most types of crafting, although for the past decade or so I've been doing primarily card making and mixed media art. I've recently embarked on a junk journaling journey that I hope you'll join me on. Today, in my very first YouTube video, we are going to be taking an idea from my art journal and turning it into a mixed media canvas, a tag, and a couple cards. Let's get crafting. This is the piece from my art journal that's going to serve as the inspiration for today's projects. It was created with old Florida statute book pages that we're going to get thrown out at work. And for the base, they were inked with various colors of Distress Oxide ink sprays in browns. For the flowers, I used pinks and blues, the leaves, obviously green. The wood letters are covered with just plain Florida statute book page. Not something I'm going to do again, which I will explain later. And for the centers of the flowers, I used prills. There were a couple other things I did with this art journal spread that we're not going to do for any of the projects today, so I'm not going to go into that. But this is our inspiration for today's projects. For the canvas, I am going to be working on an 8x10" canvas. It's an artist loft. I got it at Michael's, probably on sale because I have a stash. I had originally been thinking I was going to do a 6x6, but apparently don't have any 6x6 canvases currently in my stash. So we'll go with an 8x10 because that's what I have. Now for the canvas, the first change I've decided on is that instead of having the base be brown, I want to do blue so that it looks more like a sky. So I sprayed several pages of the Florida statute with Distress Oxide sprays. The colors for this are Salty Ocean and Salvaged Patina. For the leaves, I have sprayed book pages using Twisted Citron, and they're all Distress Oxide sprays for this project. And then for the flowers on the canvas, I decided I wanted to go with purple since I was doing a blue background. So for the purple, I used Wilted Violet Distress Oxide spray. Now you'll notice this paper is like really thin. So for the canvas, I want to glue them down to just a piece of, this is like 65-pound cardstock, just to give them a little bit more body so they're not like flopping all over the place and that they'll hold up to being hung up. For the flowers and leaves, I want a little bit of shine to them. So instead of using matte medium, which is what I normally would use for something like this, I'm going to use Liquitex gloss medium. And I'm just basically going to glue my piece of paper down to another piece of paper. And I'm going to do it on both sides because these flowers are going to be sculpted so that they're going to have a little bit of shape and dimension. And so I'm just going to add some to the paper. I find it's easiest to start, add a little bit, glue down the piece you're gluing down, and then work your way down. Something to also keep in mind, I sprayed the paper with Tim Holtz Distress Oxide sprays by Ranger. Those will react to the wetness. So when I do a top coat, which I plan on doing on this, there's going to be some movement of the color. Just be aware of that. Don't be heavy-handed when you do a top coat. Otherwise, you're going to get your color everywhere. But you might notice underneath where I'm gluing, some of the color is already bleeding through onto the paper. That doesn't bother me. You'll also notice on my brush, it's tinting. So before I do the green for the leaves, I'm going to clean off my brush. Now I'm going to set this aside to dry. And then once it's dry, I'm going to flip it over and put purple on the back of the purple, green on the back of the green, so that if you see the back, it's not white. You don't want to have white showing. For the canvas, I ended up doing some pink, and this is sprayed using Distressed Oxide in Kitsch Flamingo and picked raspberry. And then die cut out my flowers and a couple butterflies, Cherry Lynn design butterflies. I'm gonna use matte medium to attach the book paper to the canvas. So same basic principle, we're just gluing it down. And again, you can use whatever collage medium you prefer for doing these types of projects. I just found I like the matte medium because it's a little less sticky when done than Mod Podge, and it's a little thinner, so it goes on a little easier. And again, it's just basically, I'm gonna add some, and we're gonna go wrap it around the sides because you want neat, clean sides. And adding a coat on top is going to help with the durability of the paper in this project, because this will get hung up somewhere. And yeah, you'll notice that the ink's coming through, which is fine. All right, I'm going to turn this up on its side. So you can see, I'm just going to wrap around. Oops, sorry for bumping the camera. And I didn't quite get it all the way to the end, which is not a big deal because, right, it's going to get hung up. This spot's not going to be very visible wherever it's going to go, so don't worry too much about how close to the bottom you got it. It's not a big deal. But what I do want to do is mine on my corner, so I'm going to grab scissors and cut. So that I can wrap that around. I'm also going to need to trim the excess off. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this is paper with obvious text on it. I'm planning on doing the design going across this way. So my print's not going to be right side up. I'm not bothered by that. If that bothers you, make sure you align your paper with the direction so it's right side up when you are going to do your project. Where we cut off the corner and just move that around. Again, I'm not too worried about how the sides are going to look when it's done. I just want the neat look of clean edges on the front of my piece, which wrapping it around the sides helps to achieve. And I would not recommend using like your good brushes for this. This is pretty much my glue brush. Is the brush I use whenever I'm doing mixed media, collaging, that sort of thing. I'm gonna snip off the bit of at the bottom where it doesn't have writing and leave that because I really kind of like the look of that splatter right there. So just pay attention to those kind of things when you're gluing, collaging this together. I'm pretty much just going for the little bits instead of worrying about fussing with cutting, trimming off excess. I'm just going to go ahead and glue them down around the back. And you'll notice there's definitely bubbling and unevenness, and I think there's a few spots where it's just not glued down inside. Not all that worried about it. If it really bugs you, you can go in being very careful to just cut your paper. Basically poke a hole in the paper and cut it open, and then you can go in and add more glue underneath. So I'll do that over here just to show you. And there you go, it's flattened out. Ooh, just be careful to make sure you actually go gently over it and don't end up leaving white spots. I will cover that up. Over here, so I'm just gonna make sure everything's got a nice top coat going on it and set it aside to dry. Okay, so while the canvas is drying, we're gonna work on the tags. Now I have a Tim Holtz Sizzix tag die set, and this is the largest tag in that die set, but if you don't have die tags, don't worry about it. You can just cut a piece of paper. And the measurements of this tag are 3 1/8 by 6 1/4. So I cut a piece of paper 3 1/8 by 6 1/4. For cutting off the corners, you can either just take your scissors and cut your corners off. Let me grab a pair of scissors for that. And either eyeball both sides, or you can snip a corner off, take the piece you cut off, flip it over, and use it so that you get the exact same size. Or you can take an old gift card and cut some templates out of it. So you just line it up to your edges and cut it off. Now if I didn't, I think that needs to be steeper. But okay, so I'm gonna probably adjust that cut. But if you don't have the template and you just eyeball and cut off, you can then flip it over and turn it here and use that to guide your cut. But I want this a steeper cut, so I'm just eyeballing this cut. Ooh, and I have a feeling I'm gonna decide that that was too steep of a cut, but that's okay. I'm gonna create that template on this other corner of my gift card and then flip it over and do the other side, lining it up top and bottom. Cut the corner off. Not too mad at that. That'll work. Definitely steeper than this one, but the tag, it can be any shape you want it to be. So for the tag, I have decided I want to stencil some clouds on. So I have got, it's a Hefty Doodle stencil, and it's all sorts of clouds, and it's called Cloudy Skies. And what's nice about this is if you're using it, you can do layering effects and just like keep it in and slide it down, and so you get a whole variety of cloud shapes. You can, if you don't have this but have like cloud dye, you can make your own stencil. You can just kind of scallopy cut a piece of paper to use to stencil for your skies, or you can skip creating the cloud look and just ink the background. I think we'll go with this line, and I am going to use Tumbled Glass and Salty Ocean for my sky, and I'm going to start at the top with Tumbled Glass and get darker as I go down. And I'm going to start off the tag so I don't get too much color on at first, because again, I want to go from light to dark. Just using, it's a makeup brush, stenciling brush. I got them on Amazon relatively inexpensively. Lots of companies make these brushes these days, and it's my favorite way to stencil and add color. So I'm going to slide it down and over so I get a slightly different shape. And I'm going to start from underneath. Just be careful with, if you're using a stencil like this, that you don't stencil the cloud underneath shape onto your thing below where you're working. Just be mindful of that. So yeah, I was not very careful when I first was doing it, because I forgot it's been a while since I've used this and I forgot. So I've got that from the underneath cloud line. So just try and be mindful of that when you are stenciling using a stencil in this style. But I think at this point, I want to add a little Salty Ocean and start getting a little darker. I'm going to make my life a little easier and grab just a scratch piece of paper to do that, so I don't have to worry that I'm getting some color I don't want. I think as I'm getting down to the bottom here, I want to bring in a little bit more, a little darker. I think I might go Uncharted Mariner with a very light hand. As I'm getting closer to the bottom and I'm having it shift on me, thinking I should have done this, you know what, I'm going to do this on my magnetic mat so that I can use the magnet to hold the piece in place and it'll stop jumping around on me. So this is the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station by Ranger, and I really do like it because you can use magnets to hold your piece in place so that it doesn't jostle around. As more of the tags outside of the stencil, it's shifting on me as I'm trying to add the ink, as is the stencil. And it does make stenciling a lot easier because you don't have to worry about the stuff moving around. So as I said, I'm also going to dip into my Uncharted Mariner, and I'm definitely starting that way off the page to take some of the ink off the brush. And so I'm going to start again with Salty Ocean. Bit of Uncharted Mariner, and I'm again brushing it a little off on the scrap paper because it is an intense color that has the potential to take over. Let's go in with some Uncharted Mariner, again starting off the page. I'm going to do the same thing with this tag. Before I start, because I was using such a dark color, I am going to wipe off my brush on a paper towel. I do not recommend cleaning this with water at this point because what you're going to end up with then is a sodden mess that won't work for stenciling until it dries out, which takes a good bit of time. Just see, it's stained blue. This is the one I use for blue. I pretty much have one brush for all of the color families. So all right, so now we have 2 cloudy sky tags. I'm gonna go ahead and punch a hole. Just whatever hole punch you have. I'm using, this is a We Are Memory Keepers hole punch that's got a 1/16 and 1/8, 3/16, a quarter, and 5/16 hole options. And I'm just gonna use the 1/4 inch and kind of eyeball where it goes. Now comes the fun part, the decorating. And I've already cut out my flowers so I have got a variety of die cut flowers, but I realize I don't have any leaves, so I'm gonna need to pause and do that. I also die cut a couple of branches out, and I used book paper that I had that I coffee dyed. I'm gonna go cut some leaves, so I have some leaves. I also need to cut out letters because I want to spell out bloom. So I will probably do that and then come back. So I cut out leaves and I cut out the letters for the word bloom using the new Holtz Sizzix. It's Alphanumeric Emporium. There's the number if you want it. And this one, it cuts out the shape of the letter and also the little highlights. So I cut it out once out of coffee dyed book page, and once out of one of the book pages I dyed using the pigment ink, which I'll link the video below where I talk about the process where I dyed those pages. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking I need to put the word on something that the background's a little too busy. It's just not gonna stand out enough for what I want. I just can't decide because it's hard to see them. So I like the die. This is the first time I'm using it. I really like the look of the letters, but there's really no good way of seeing, because all of the pieces are curled up from being cut, how it's gonna look with the pieces stuck back in. It's a little bit like a puzzle that I have to piece back together, so this may take a minute. I'm kind of thinking what probably would have been a better idea with this die set is to also include just the solid letter so that you could essentially glue the 2 pieces onto the solid letter and see how they look. All right, this is not gonna work. I'm gonna have a think and come back. So I went ahead and assembled the letters on just a piece of scrap cardstock I had lying around, and then fussy cut them out. So I'm just gonna put this out there. We need a set of solids that match the, what is it, Alphanumeric Emporium, so that you can build on a solid base instead of doing what I had to do. Just gonna throw that out there to, Holtz, Sizzix, the powers that be. So I did that, and I like how the letters came out for the bloom. So this guy's ready to be assembled, I think. The branch die cut out of coffee dyed paper. That's gonna go there. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue down the branch first, because that's where everything's starting from. And I'm gonna use my art glitter glue because it's got the nice little tip on it, makes it easier to glue down thin pieces like this, die cuts where you've got thin areas. You get less glue splurging out everywhere. So now before I put the letters on, I want to put my flowers on. And these are, I think I've mentioned it before, but just in case, the Sizzix, I believe they're Tim Holtz Small Tattered Florals, 660806 if you want the number. And so I've got a variety of sizes, some bigger than others, and I'm just going to pick out some, and I am going to shape my flowers before I attach them. So this is my shaping mat. I think I got it as part of a kit from Sizzix, which included the various shaping tools, which are generally just a tool with a little ball on the end. This one's got 2 different ball sizes. My other one has kind of like a poke. This is what I use as my poke tool, pointy end and a smaller ball tool. You can use, if you don't have something like this, a mouse pad. I had pulled out, let me see if this is some packing material that came with a package. You just need something firm yet squishy that you can shape your flowers on. So if I want to, say, use this guy, what I'm gonna do, it's not that tool, take my little round tool and just roll around the back side. This is the back side of the petals to give them a little shape. Then flip it over, tamp down the center, and now the floral has some dimension. That is one, and I want to put another smaller floral in the center of that. So let me find one that will go in the center. Now this is where you can mix it up. You can either go with the same color, like this one, or grab a different color and put your center in there in a blue. Let's go ahead and shape this guy. Probably should use the smaller ball on this one. Same way, sculpt the petals on the back side, flip it over, push it down in the middle. And I find I have an easier time getting these situated together if I use tweezers. So there we've got a blue and pink speckled flower, and I think I'm gonna want, there's one more smaller size in this petal configuration. And I think I'm going to try and find a pink version of that. We're going to go with this guy. Definitely going to use the smaller tool. Just roll it around the petals on the back side. Flip them over. Whoop. Press down. Stack up, and we've got one flower done. That can go there. All right, so I'm now going to speed this up and make some more flowers for our tag. To symbol, I just put a dot of art glitter glue in the center tweak where I want the petals to land before pushing it down, because once art dries, it's dry, and that one's not as offset as I would have liked. Okay, let's get at least one of our tags fully assembled. That guy was down there. So I'm just, again, going to use my art glitter glue. Come in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to glue down my flowers. And I'm going to tuck some leaves underneath. Now this is very light paper, as I've mentioned before, so I'm going to fully glue the leaves down. I'm just going to lift up the petals a little and scooch it under. For finishing off the flowers, you can use whatever you've got in your stash to make centers. So you can use gems, sequins, liquid pearls, stickles, whatever you've got handy that will make a nice little center. I'm gonna use my prills because I've got them, so why not use them? And I'm just gonna put in the center of the blue one a little dab of glue and kind of keep trying to do it with tweezers, but they don't really want to be grabbed by tweezers. So I'm gonna grab a little scoop, scoop some in the center, then just dump the excess back into the container. I'm now going to attach the letters we die cut out, and I'm going to put, woo, I'm going to knock things over is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a ruler so that I can hopefully get them somewhat straight. And I find holding it with the tweezers just makes it easier to hold while I'm gluing and less likely that I get glue all over my fingers. Then we've got our where you are with my ruler. Now this ruler has got metal in the one end, so I can use it to cut. I would not recommend cutting using an acrylic ruler because you will shave off bits of your ruler if you do that. Then we're gonna stick it here, and I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm trying to decide if I like it or not. I think I'm gonna hold off on sticking that down. For the top, you have a variety of options of what you can do there. Option 1, nothing. You can just leave it as it is. Option 2 is you can put an eyelet in there. And option 3 is you can put a hole reinforcer. And I have got a whole bunch of lovely hole reinforcers die cut out using Elizabeth Craft Designs hole reinforcer die, and I've got a floral shaped one cut out of book page, and I'm just going to ink it up and with some Kitsch Flamingo. Let's glue that down, and we will work on the canvas because that's all dry and ready to go. I went ahead and pulled out my wood letters. So on the original piece in my art journal, I did wood letters that I had covered with book page, and that was kind of a pain in the neck to cut the excess book page off from around the letters. So instead of doing that, we are gonna stamp some letters onto it so it looks like it's from book page. So what I'm also thinking is that I want to add a little bit of color to them. Go with some spun sugar, distress ink, to give them just a hint of color. The letter, and we're just going to go and add a little color to them so they're not so plain. So let's see, it's just a hint of pink. I don't know if you can tell. I can see it. It's a little faint. I'll probably add just a little bit more. It does show up better against the blue background of our canvas. So I'm just going to go and do all those letters with some spun sugar. All right, now that we have got all of our letters inked, I'm going to stamp them with this stamp. And I think to make my life easier, I'm going to use some repositionable adhesive to kind of get them stuck down a little bit. Take, I think, Vintage Photo. It's a Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous stamp, and I'm just going to stamp so it just kind of gives the impression of the letters on the letters so that they're not completely plain. And see, you can kind of see now, I think, the difference between the plain and the lightly pinked. So we're going to do that for all of the letters. I am going to actually do the same thing to the branches that I die cut to go on here, just to give a subtle indication of book page to them. They are I cut them out of a very dark brown. Again, it's very, very subtle. Now, we're going to go ahead and add our branches. I'm going to use art glitter glue. Again, just add a little bit of art glitter everywhere. Place the first one coming out of this corner. Now I am going to shape and assemble a bunch of flowers off screen, and then we can attach them to our branches and attach our letters underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and off screen shape all my flowers because you've seen me do that, and it's going to be the same process, but I'm going to be using my double-sided flowers. So I've gone ahead and finished assembling all the all of the flowers. And as you can see, I put, there we go, prills in the center, and I used purple, pink, and blue for the flower centers. So there are all our assembled flowers. Some of them I just stuck to one layer just to add some variety. I also took the butterflies and backed them with a little of the green colored paper because they really just weren't standing out well enough on the blue background. So now we need to attach them. And this is a trick I'm going to use that my father found on YouTube. I don't know where. All right, so to glue it down, I'm using Aleene's The Ultimate. I want a really strong adhesive for this because this is gonna be hanging upright. So you wanna make sure your flowers are gonna stay on. Now, the tip my father found online is that if you glue to itself, it adheres better than if you just glue something. So what that means is, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to lift up a flower. I'm gonna dab a little glue on the back of the flower. I'm gonna dab the flower where it's going to be. Then I'm gonna lift it up, flip it over, set it aside. Then once the glue dries, I'm gonna add more glue to the back of the flower and attach it in place. And the regular leaves, I think we're just gonna, the leaves, because they're laying flat against it, should be fine if I just glue them down. So again, I'm gonna put glue on the back, dab it where it's gonna go so that glue gets on the canvas, turn it upside down, set it aside, let it dry. So we're just gonna go and do that for all of our flowers. All right, and now I'm gonna do the same thing with all of our letters. Spots we glued first have dried and are ready for the placement of the flowers. We're just gonna put a dot of glue on the back of the flowers again and glue them where we have the dried dot, which you may or may not be able to see, but it's slightly shiny where I had placed the glue before. So I don't know if you can see, and I don't want to lift this up. Well, I guess I can. If you can catch the shininess from where the glue is or not. I don't know if it's showing up on screen. I've had some like glue strings, so one of the things that you should try and remember to do that I don't always remember is after you're done, spin it around so it snaps off any glue strings. I'm noticing my bees got a bunch of, let's see if you can see, little strings going between, so I'm just going to take my tweezers and pull those out so that you don't see those. All right, so all we have left to attach to the canvas are our butterflies and our little flower for on the bloom. So let's there we go. Oh, there's one last thing to do before it's completely finished, and it's trim off this little guy who's overhanging on the top. So I'm just gonna stand it up on my install screen, take a pair of scissors, and just snip it off. And I think it needs a little bit of glue underneath it to make sure it stays down. And there we go. Our canvas is done. Okay, so next up we have the cards, and I find my silicone mat a little too squishy when I'm folding cards and doing that sort of thing, so that's why I pulled out this cutting mat so that I have a firmer work surface. And so this is a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that I cut in half so that I can make two 5.5 by 4 1/4 cards, because that is my standard card size. And this is either Georgia Pacific or Nina Crest Solar White cardstock for my card bases. You can use whatever your preferred cardstock for a card base is. So just folded two in half. Option number one, as you can see, is to turn this into a full-on tree, going vertically up the card instead of branches coming in the side like we did on the canvas and on the tag. So for this one, I cut out, I had originally tried using the branch from the Tattered Floral die set, but it was too skinny and didn't work. So this die is Memory Box Tall Birch, and the number is 98336. I've had it for quite a while, and I know Memory Box does discontinue some of its dies, I believe, so I don't know if it's still available, but pretty much any tree die will work for this. Don't like how the blue shows through the ferns, so we want to put a little bit of my spare paper behind it and then put the ferns on top. But we're going to start by putting the base on the card base. And I'm going to use our glitter glue for this. You can use glue stick, tape runner, whatever you prefer. I have Okay, so I am going to just use a ruler to tear off a little strip of this, since it's basically just there to serve as a backing for my ferny leaves that are going to be the grass. So I'm setting it at the base of the card and just tearing, excuse my arm. And I probably should have cut this straight using my cutter, because, yeah, now I got a jaggedy edge at the bottom. I think I may just glue it down and then flip it off over and trim off the excess. And you'll notice I ended up trimming it a little short. I'm not too bothered by that, because again, I'm gonna stick these guys over here. I just wanted something behind because I didn't want the blue showing through. I told you I did the tall birch, and I used a scrap piece of cardstock. So this actually, the birch tree, like this branch is cut off short, this one's cut off short, and this is cut off short. So, but I figured I'm putting flowers there, I don't really mind if it's cut coming cut off a little short. Alright, I think I'm probably going to cut a few more of these so that I can cover the full bottom piece with the leaves. And you may notice there's no centers to these flowers. I'm going to do something a little different for these flowers and not use the prills, but we'll get to that after we attach everything to our card. All right, so I've got all of my flowers attached. I'm gonna die cut this off camera and add some more, but I've got a little excess hanging over, so we're just gonna trim that away. So the other one I figured would go more along the lines of the same layout as the canvas, with the branches coming across and in, and use whatever pattern paper you have in your stash. You could also ink the paper like we did for the tag, or take just plain blue paper and use that. All right, now for our flower centers, I am going to use liquid pearls, lavender lace. Oh, this one's mint green, which really looks more like a light blue, and then petal pink. Use whatever you have to create a center for your flower. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the pearls in the center. It tends to, let's see how it's kind of lumpy? If you just tap it, it will flatten it out. Also, like flick your finger underneath. Actually, I don't like how it doesn't show up very well on that one, so I think I'm gonna come in and use just whatever tool you have that you can scrape it up because it's not yet dry. And I'm gonna go back and use pink for those because I think the pink will stand out better. And now I'm gonna set these guys aside to dry because otherwise there's a good chance I will stick my finger in a flower and mess up the center. Okay, so I want to add a few finishing touches to the tag. Now, when I first envisioned making this tag, I wanted to have the bloom in the die cut letters, and then I was thinking of having where you are underneath, white printed on black, kind of like, you know, Tim Holtz has those word stickers that I don't recall off the top of my head what they are called. But they usually come with the sentiments white on black and black on white, and I was thinking white on black would be really cool here. So I got for my label maker some black tape that prints white on black, and I cut it out trying to be as straight as possible, and I just don't know, it seems like too much of a contrast. But I'm hoping that I have a solution because the pack that had the black in it also had a gray, and I think that might actually work. Let's trim the sides down. And I think I like that. Let's peel the sticky back off. And since this was a new pack of tape, I'm assuming it's going to be as good sticky wise as all of the other labels from this, so hopefully I won't regret not adding glue. We're going to just trim that excess off, and then I'm going to add some fibers to the top, and I picked these guys up from a shop off Etsy, and I don't remember the shop's name off the top of my head right now, but I will put a link below so that you can check out the various trims that they have. And let's see if I can find where this one starts. That is the one thing I've been finding, is I can't seem to find the ends of the ones that, here we go. Okay, so my fabricy scissors had gone walkabout, which I have a couple pairs of scissors that I use just for cutting fabric, trims, ribbons, that sort of thing. And these are actually a pair of Scotch. They're like the kitty safety scissors, and I find these work really well for cutting ribbons and fibers and things. So yeah, I don't use the same scissors to cut ribbon and fiber as I do paper. And you'll find most crafters don't, because it will dull your scissors switching back and forth. And so I picked up, it's an easy beater, which should make pulling these fibers through our little hole a whole lot easier than if I try and thread them through myself. So I'm just gonna do that. Oh yes, so much easier. And then go like this. And I actually think it needs something not fluffy mixed in. I think it needs a little bit of lace. Pull out nice thin lace from my stash. I'm pretty sure this lace ribbon came from the Really Reasonable Ribbon Company, which is a shop online. As far as I know, they're still in business. I have not shopped there in a while because I was a member of their Ribbon of the Month Club for about a year and a half, and so I have a ridiculous amount of ribbon and will never really need to buy it again, I don't think, or at least not anytime soon. there we go. We're gonna do this again. That made it a little thicker. There we go. Just wanted to make sure I didn't rip the tag. So this is a fairly easy way of just make the loop and put the tails through to add your fibers to the top. And yeah, I think I like having the ribbon in there mixed in. So that tag's done. So I went ahead and finished adding more of the fern branches to the grassy areas on the 2 cards. It's not really showing up as well as I had hoped, like the texture of it. You kind of have to really look close to see it. And I did try inking it and it didn't make much of a difference. I also decided when I got done with this card that there was too much green at the bottom. So I added another flower, and for the stem I used one of the pieces of fern die cuts and just trimmed off some of the leaves so that there were just a few leaves. And then for my little snail, I took a My Favorite Things button die cut it using some of the leftover pieces from the canvas, because this is the glossy one. And then so I cut the piece in half, and then I just rounded the corners, you know, took off the little corners to make them a little bit more rounded. So let's show you up close the little snail. And then for the body, I just kind of held the half button on the piece of paper to get the sizing right, and just freehand drew kind of a snail body shape and cut it out and added it on. So those are the cards. We also made a tag. And of course, our canvas, which is now all dry. It's got the frills in the centers for the flowers, the stamping on the letters, and all those lovely details. And all of this inspired by this spread from my art journal. So you can see how different and yet similar all of the pieces are. You can see how the inspiration played out in the canvas, the cards, and the tag. At least I hope you can. But they're also significantly different from the look of the art journal. So if you see something on Pinterest or YouTube that is in a medium that you don't usually work with, you can still take inspiration from that and create something in your medium. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to be certain not to miss future videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for joining me on my very first YouTube video, and happy crafting!